Loneliness does not always announce itself with emptiness. Sometimes it blends into routine. It learns how to smile on cue. It sits comfortably in conversations that never go too deep. For many, the first recognition is not dramatic. There is no sudden collapse of friendships or withdrawal from the world. Life continues to look full from the outside. Messages arrive. Invitations exist. People know the name, the face, the role. Yet something feels missing beneath all of it. There is a strange fatigue that follows social moments, not the tiredness of effort, but the exhaustion of being present without being revealed. Words are exchanged, but something essential remains untouched. Thoughts are edited before they are spoken. Emotions are softened before they are shared. Over time, connection becomes performance. Laughter is real, but incomplete. Listening becomes automatic, while being heard feels rare. This form of loneliness is often misunderstood, even internally, because how can someone feel alone when others are always nearby? So the feeling is dismissed, minimized, rationalized. The mind tells itself that nothing is wrong, that this is simply adulthood, that depth is unrealistic, that everyone feels this way. But the body remembers differently. There is a quiet ache when returning home after being surrounded all day, a sense that no space truly held the inner self. Moments of closeness feel fleeting, almost accidental, never sustained. This is the loneliness of emotional absence rather than physical isolation. It forms when presence replaces intimacy, when relationships exist, but resonance does not. People experiencing this often blame themselves. They wonder if they are asking for too much. If their inner world is simply too complex, too quiet, too heavy to share. So they adapt. They become agreeable, easy to be around, low maintenance. They learn how to fit into conversations without ever taking up emotional space. And slowly, without realizing it, they begin to disappear inside their own lives. This chapter is not about diagnosing a flaw. It is about noticing a pattern, a gentle recognition that loneliness can exist even in company, and that feeling unseen is not the same as being alone. Loneliness that exists in company rarely starts in the present. It has a history, not always a dramatic one, but a quiet accumulation of moments where emotional presence was inconsistent or conditional. For many, it begins early. Not with abandonment, but with adaptation. There may have been care, structure, even love, but emotional attunement was uncertain. Feelings were acknowledged only when they were convenient. Needs were noticed only when they were easily expressed. So the child learned to observe before expressing. To read the room. To adjust tone, emotion, and expectation. Over time, authenticity became risky, not because it was punished, but because it was rarely met. This is how emotional self-silencing forms, not through trauma alone, but through subtle absence. When a person learns that being low need creates safety, they begin to minimize themselves automatically. They grow into someone who is emotionally perceptive of others, but distant from their own inner signals. In relationships, this adaptation appears as ease. They are good listeners, thoughtful, reliable, rarely demanding, rarely confrontational. From the outside, they seem emotionally mature. From the inside, they feel quietly unaccompanied, because connection has been built on regulation rather than revelation, on harmony rather than truth. They become skilled at maintaining relationships without testing whether they could be held fully. This is not a conscious choice. It is a learned rhythm, a way of staying connected without risking rejection. As adulthood arrives, the pattern feels normal. Social circles grow, responsibilities expand. But the emotional distance remains unchanged. They may have people to talk to, but not spaces where they can speak without translation, where thoughts do not need to be softened, where emotions are not edited for acceptability. So loneliness persists, even in familiarity, not because connection is absent, but because emotional safety has never been fully experienced. This chapter is not about blame. It is about origin. Understanding that this loneliness is not a personal failure, but a survival strategy that outlived its necessity. And recognition of origin is the first step toward understanding what the loneliness is truly asking for, from a psychological perspective. Loneliness in social presence is not a contradiction. It is a divide, a separation between external engagement and internal experience. The mind can be active, responsive, even socially fluent, while the emotional self remains distant and unexpressed. This divide often forms through attachment patterns where connection was maintained by regulation rather than mutual attunement. When emotional needs are repeatedly unmet, the nervous system adapts. It learns to stay alert, not open. Present, but guarded. Over time, the brain associates closeness with monitoring rather than safety. Attention shifts outward toward reading others, adjusting behavior, anticipating reactions. Inner signals become quieter, less trusted. Psychologically, this creates a state of internal disconnection. The person is with others, but not emotionally accompanied. This is often reinforced by self-silencing habits. Thoughts are filtered before they are spoken. Emotions are delayed until they feel appropriate. Vulnerability is postponed indefinitely, not because it is unwanted, but because it feels unprotected. Research in emotional attunement shows that humans require more than interaction to feel connected. They need resonance, the experience of having inner states recognized and reflected. Without this, the brain registers social contact without emotional nourishment. Connection becomes informational rather than relational. This explains why some people feel lonelier after socializing than before. The nervous system expends energy maintaining engagement with receiving emotional regulation in return. The loneliness deepens not from absence, but from imbalance. The mind becomes highly relational. The inner world becomes increasingly private. And slowly, the person begins to believe that their emotional depth is something that must be managed alone. This is the psychological core of being lonely while surrounded. Not a lack of people, but a lack of emotional reciprocity. Not invisibility, but unshared visibility. Understanding this divide does not immediately resolve it, but it reframes the experience. The loneliness is not weakness. It is a signal pointing toward an unmet need for emotional resonance, not social quantity. And recognizing the signal is where the inner conflict begins to soften. There comes a moment when the loneliness is no longer resisted, not fixed, not explained away, simply acknowledged. This moment is quiet. It does not arrive as a breakthrough, but as a soft shift in awareness. The realization that the emptiness was never asking for more people, only for more truth. Inner conflict begins to loosen when the person stops judging the feeling, when loneliness is no longer treated as a personal flaw, but as a messenger. It has been signaling the same thing all along, a need to be emotionally present with oneself before expecting that presence from others. This does not mean withdrawal. It does not mean detachment. It means integration. The parts that learn to stay silent are slowly noticed, not pushed forward, not forced to speak, simply allowed to exist. As awareness grows, something subtle changes. The nervous system begins to associate presence with safety, not performance. Moments of connection become less exhausting, not because they are deeper yet, but because they are more honest. There is space to feel without immediate translation. To notice emotional responses without minimizing them. To recognize when something matters, even if it remains unspoken. This is not a story of transformation. It is a story of return. A return to internal companionship. When the inner world becomes less guarded, loneliness softens, not because others suddenly understand perfectly, but because the person no longer disappears inside themselves. Connection becomes possible not through intensity, but through quiet authenticity. And even in moments of solitude, there is less emptiness. Because the most painful loneliness was never about being alone, it was about being emotionally absent from one's own experience. This is where healing lives. Not in resolution, but in gentle presence.